Hello and welcome to YouTube and Dawn community. Today I'm gonna show you one of my beginner builds. This time it's gonna be the Auradin. The Auradin is basically a aura paladin. So are you looking for a lazy aura build? Do you wanna get as close as possible to something like RF and PoE or an Auradin in Diablo 2? Look no further because you have found the beginner friendly Dawn Auradin guide. The build burns trash and heroes to ashes with multiple auras with a range of at least 4 and up to 9 meter radius. For bosses, you can choose to either run around them or spam some additional fire beams, and even they will drop rather quickly. You can play this character as a full-on face tanker with the support of Inquisitor's Seal and Oathkeeper's Ascension, or choose to kite around the enemy within your aura's radius. Like all of my beginner build guides, this guide is also supported by a full playthrough through all difficulties, all the way to Ultimate Lokar on Hardcore, for which you'll find a link down in the description of this video, so make sure to check it out if you want to see some more gameplay and you want to have a video to like run on your second monitor while you play this build yourself. So yeah, this build is very easy to play, doesn't need lots of buttons, doesn't need too much attention because you can just like run around on your aura build and like focus on the enemy's skill rotations instead of like worrying too much about your own abilities, and it is also very much hardcore viable. Alright, so for skill allocation, I started out with Inquisitor because Oathkeeper kinda sucks early game, and Inquisitor has two very good early game abilities. Number one being the entire Word of Pain line, and number two being Stormbox of Elgaroth. So you basically start putting points down here, and points into Word of Pain for AoE, and then also start mixing in some points into Stormbox of Elgaroth to gain some additional single target damage. You can basically put 1 point into your Master Bar, 1 into Word of Pain, and 1 into Stormbox of Elgaroth per level. This should be like good enough for you for the entirety of Act 1. And once you arrive at the Word of Agony and Word of Renewal, make sure to put 2 points into Word of Renewal for 8% movement speed. This is huge for leveling, and also get some points into Word of Agony to like increase radius on your Word of Pain. You don't really have to put more points in the Stormbox from now on, just pump Word of Pain, like start maxing this out, and also like maybe put some more points down here until you arrive at something like this. This is what I did when I leveled this character, and I would in hindsight probably put more points in Stormbox and like don't use color storage, stuff like that. I just used like these two abilities because I had like found some random items that actually gave me some bonuses towards these two skills. So I mean, you're kind of free to do whatever you want to early game, as long as you use Word of Pain, you're fine. This is like your main damage for AoE. Ideally you should probably use Stormbox of Elgaroth for additional single target damage, but you can also like mix something like Rune of Color Stored here if you like find gear that supports it. During Act 1 there is unfortunately no way to play this as an aura build yet. We will get there once we are done with War and Krieg and once we get a certain item in Act 7. Now when it comes to your first 7 devotion points you can get in Act 1, you should just first of all get movement speed, such as the total speed from Jackal and the movement speed from Sailor's Guide. For gear, as you can see, I didn't use anything special in Act 1, just use whatever you find, use whatever gives you like decent resistances, whatever gives you like maybe some elemental damage on top, or some skill bonuses to skills that you could use, such as Rune of Color Store, Stormbox, and Word of Pain. Additionally, I can always recommend you to get a Searing Amber early on, like use a Searing Amber into your either offhand or main hand, and use the granted skill, the Fire Blast, for like additional single target damage. With a setup similar to this, you should be able to easily face roll the Act 1 in normal and even veteran. Alright, stage 2 can be a little bit more scary, right? You like wanna not get hit by that, not get hit by that. And then you kinda still wanna stay like in melee range. Or like move out. Don't get hit by the stun. And then either stay like close or dodge the like crossbow attack, right? If you like stay close though, he's not gonna use the crossbow, so like you kinda might want to stay close so that he doesn't use the crossbow. 50 plus 12 was like 62, right? 62 divided by 3 is 21 basically. So we need like level 22 to have a maxed out Aura of Sandra, right? So after defeating War and Krieg in Act 1, you have to go into the Forgotten Gods Act and try to get the Scarab Carapace. The Scarab Carapace drops from some of the bug bosses. You can for example farm Margur the Rotting from the slightly hidden Crawling Nest within the very first level of Forgotten Gods. Once you get the item and you are level 22, you can do the switch to Aura of Censure. At level 22 you will have enough skill points to still have 2 points into Word of Renewal, and also to max out your entire bar and to max out Aura of Censure. And congratulations, from now on you are a Auradin. Before getting to that point you should complete the very first quest of Forgotten Gods, and then choose a faction, and choose your faction depending on which movement ability you want to use. What should we choose here? Like, if you don't know which one you want to choose, right? You can always like check out the venues first, like see this one for example has Vanish and Leap. Leap is basically a leap, and Vanish is basically like a shadow strike, like you're gonna port to enemies. It does only work on enemies though, like you can't just port anywhere. Charge is basically the same thing as Vanish, but it's like slower, and it also can use a shield, right? And also like stun enemies. This one is basically a teleport, like a true teleport, like you... It's not as... Why did I say that? It's not as... It doesn't have like the same large range as Vanish or Charge have. But you can use it like anywhere, like you don't need an enemy to click on it. Like to use it. Lastly, we have Rush and Disengage. Disengage basically like makes you jump back, and Rush is like Virus Smite, so it's like a charge forward, like in a line. So after getting the movement ability of your choice and the shield for Aura of Censure, you can attack the remaining quests from Act 7 and now proceed with Act 2. Also, as soon as you go into Act 2, don't forget that you need to use components. Components are super important in this game to like max your resistances as well, to like help you out maxing out those resistances. You can use components that you find, such as Unholy Inscription, Soul Shards, Bracifers, Mutated Scales. But more important than those are going to be the ones that you can craft at the Smith, such as the Anti-Venom Saw for Poison Rest, the Ward Stone for Elemental Bleeding Rest and Movement Speed, a Rune Stone into your head, for which you can buy the blueprint from the Rover faction in Act 2. And for damage, to scale our damage, we need to craft 2 enchanted flints and put them into our main hand and our shield, and benefit from the aura here. We have to like activate the aura stacks. You can use 2 of this. You will get 150% fire and burn damage basically just from those 2 auras, and that's gonna boost your Aura of Censure by quite a lot. Also, don't forget to check out my components guide on YouTube. You can check it out here on the top right of this video right now, or in the description below. First of all, in Act 2 you can get Skinner's Torch, and you can choose to save this guy, then he's gonna give you a ring in Devil's Crossing, or you just let him kill his family and then you kill him, which is kind of, well, not what you should do in real life, right? But then this guy will give you like a pretty decent fire one-hander to boost your fire damage of your Aura of Censure. After that you can get a free relic from the Rover Elder questline and start working on your devotions and skill allocation as follows. Also, for your relic, if you don't like your Bone Talisman that much, or if you maybe like fucked up the questline, you can always use a Calamity relic instead. Calamity has also some decent fire damage and another proc that like procs whenever you hit anything with your auras, for example, so it's not like too bad either. This is a baseline craft by the Smith, so you can just like craft it the second you rescue the Smith. Now, after your initial 7 devotions from Act 1, maybe you've gotten some additional ones from Act 7 in the Forgotten Gods Act, and once you get some more in Act 2 and 3 and 4 and so on, you want to make sure to work on Roan's Crown first from now on. So you put some points at the crossroads, get the Quill next, this is very important. Next you pick up Scar's Light for some more elemental damage and also the 4 green affinity. And then you pick 1 point at the crossroads, and then you can choose the Roan's Crown devotion. You want to get all these nodes while leveling, and then put the active to a skill of your choice. The problem now with auras is that unfortunately you cannot bind any of these active devotions to any of the auras except for the Heart of Wrath aura, because it's bound to Judgment and you can bind the devotions to Judgment. So in this case, while leveling, you will need to pick up an additional skill to use to proc this Elemental Storm Breath. So for skills, you should put a 1 point in the Storm Box. You should also put a 1 pointer into Deadly Aim, and you should also like put 1 pointers into Vigor and points into Steel Resolve. You can put more points into Steel Resolve depending on like how much Aether and Chaos Resistance you feel like you need. However, for normal difficulty it's not gonna be that important to put many points here, but certainly at the very least around level 40 you wanna put some points here. Also, once you started using a Mark of the Traveler in your pants, as well as 2 Ward Stones into your Amulet and your Medal, these 3 together will give you 20% additional movement speed And also you will gain an additional 8% here, so you will already get 28% additional movement speed. And then you barely need like the 6% auto speed from Jackal, and you're basically done with your movement speed cap, because movement speed is capped at 135% in this game. You also might get some additional movement speed on the base of your boots, right? Such as, for example, for the March boots have some movement speed in them, or any green boots that have like of haste suffix, for example, will give you additional movement speed. So once you got those components, you can definitely remove the Sailor's Guide node again. I will still keep the Jackal and probably also complete it, because you will need the affinity here to unlock Witchblade. So you basically pull all the blues and you can use these blues to get to your Rowan's Crown quicker. And depending on which other items you find, you can use different filler abilities. On my playthrough, for example, I found a pretty decent Incendiary Cask, which gives you bonuses to Ignafar, so I did use Ignafar as an additional filler and use this also to proc Devotions. So once you have completed your Metastorm, you can retake the purple Devotion here from the Crossroads, and you can work on Zolar's Witchblade. If you feel like you want more additional damage earlier, you could even spec into Fiend before all of these like greens down here. So you could just like get Fiend basically at the start or in the middle of Act 2. This is also what I did and used between say around 25 to 35 or even 40. However, it is not a must do, you can do this, you don't have to. What you really should be working on though is Zolar's Witchblade. Zolar's Witchblade, and especially the proc Eldritch Fire here, gives you fire resistance reduction, so this is an absolutely mandatory devotion for any fire damage build, such as also this aura build. Now what do you bind this to? You can either bind it to Word of Pain, or as I said earlier, you can just use this on any filler ability that you use, depending on like which items you get. After completing Zolar's Witchfire, you can retake the red crossroad here, but you still need the green one because you need 10 greens to start working on Magi. And Magi is like what you want to work on next, because Magi is basically huge damage for pretty much any fire build. The proc is insane, and you want to use this. So again, you will need an additional ability to proc this with, and by the time you get to Magi, you should have probably picked up something like Virus Smite already, or also Judgment. And speaking about skills and skill point allocation, your skill point allocation up to level 40, which will put you down to like 130 points available down here, should look like something like this. So you basically just work on Oathkeeper's stats points here, right? You just like put 3 points here all the time, and whenever you need a additional skill to proc stuff with, you choose one of the Inquisitor's skill. Like Stormbox is an insane procer, you should always use this. You should always start using this first to proc stuff, in my opinion, and then secondly you choose whatever you use as a filler. So for example Ignafar, or you could start using the Word of Pain, just like put 3 1-pointers into each of these abilities and just use this to like cover a pretty large area and have them proc your devotions. Once you get skill bonuses to Inquisitor, you can like put 3 1-pointers into Vigor, Steel Resolve and Deadly Aim. And other than that, you just keep on pushing the Oathkeeper up to Virus Smite. You get Virus Smite as soon as you can for extra mobility, and then you keep pushing until you get to Judgment, and then you can use either Judgment or Virus Smite to also proc devotions, and then you might not even need, for example, Word of Pain anymore. Now after this, you want to get to your Heart of Wrath, to your second aura, as soon as possible, right? You want to get here no matter what, so just like pump stat points again up to Heart of Wrath, and once you arrive at Heart of Wrath, you just want to max it out, right? Keep in mind that additional to your skills, you could also bind these devotions to your movement augment if that movement augment does deal damage. So it does not work with the teleport, but it does work with all the others, such as for example Vanish or Charge. Now for gear, additionally to the Incendiary Cast that I highlighted earlier, if you want to use Flames of Ignafar as a filler, you can also use the Incendiary Shoulder Plates that you get also from the Chronic Game members to like increase your burn and fire damage. And after killing Cronley, you will get to the second beehive, and there you will find the Ulra Prox boss. You need to kill this bee and reset the session and kill him again if you don't get his amulet. Ulra Prox's thing does have like a lightning aether damage base, so you don't care about that. What you care about is just +1 all skills to Inquisitor, and this is gonna make your Inquisitor tree light up like a Christmas tree and give you some additional bonuses also to Order of Censure. There we go. After that, in Act 3, you want to look out for the Flesh Warped Defender. The Flesh Warped Defender drops from the like Flesh Warped Trolls, basically like the Aether infused trolls that you will start meeting at the end of Act 2, early Act 3. And the Flesh Warped Defender is really good because of the Judgment modifier. You shouldn't use this over your Scarab Carapace if you don't have Heart of Wrath yet, but once you have Heart of Wrath as an ability, you need to switch over to Flash Warp Defender instantly, since Heart of Wrath only has a base 3 seconds duration, and Judgment has a base 5 seconds skill recharge. And that shield does not only convert physical to fire, and also give you damage reduction attached to it as a debuff to enemies, but it also reduces the recharge of your Judgment by 1.5 seconds, and that together with maybe some additional Global CDR that you get from other gear will basically give you close to 100% uptime on your Heart of Wrath. And this is pretty much essential for the build. We're going to be using this shield all the way to endgame, just like get a better version maybe later on. But yeah, this is all you need for a shield. Anyway, we have arrived at the Gruesome Harvest, and here we're gonna fight the Amalgamation, which is another boss, which has like a double smash, like this one, smash smash, which deals like way more damage on high difficulties, and then she has like another like, well, she died. Yeah. Now in Act 3, after killing the Amalgamation, you are also gonna have to choose between Kymon's Chosen and Death's Vigil. On a Paladin, you wanna be like a righteous type of guy, so you obviously wanna choose Kymon's Chosen. Alright, we're gonna side with Kymon's Chosen, because I found out that Kymon's Chosen have like a shoulder piece that gives you like +2 to Aura of Censure, right? And that is gonna prove like to be useful for this build, obviously. Also, one of their quest lines tells you to kill Master Ravok, and Master Ravok and Fort Heron has the Death's Whisper Hood, and that Death's Whisper Hood does have +3 to Resilience and -4 seconds skill recharge to Resilience. Resilience is a pretty nice defensive passive that you can put 1 or 2 points into once you get that hood. If you don't get the hood, I would actually skip Resilience until later on. For the glove slot, I did find the Inscribed Bracers to be pretty good actually for this type of build, because of the, again, +2 to Heart of Wrath. So once you have that Heart of Wrath skill, these will boost your damage by quite a bit. However, they are a random drop, so you need to get kinda lucky to get these while leveling, but they shouldn't be like that rare either. Now for your weapon, you can actually use that torch quite some time, but at some point you wanna get an upgrade, and a very good upgrade would be, for example, the Spellfire Wand. Now the Spellfire Wand is a craftable scepter, for which you can find the blueprint either randomly, or you can get it from Benevald in the Blood Grove. For those of you that don't know about Benevald, Benevald is kind of like a secret shopkeeper over here on the small island in the river that flows through the Blood Grove. So how do you get there? From the Blood Grove Rift you have to go southwest, and then over here, and then there's gonna be a small entrance here into the river, and then you go through the river, under the bridge, and then over here to the island. And Benevald can sell you a couple of things that are pretty useful for any build, so make sure to check him out and buy, for example, the Spellfire Wand blueprint if he sells it. Another weapon you can get in Act 4 would be the Bloodlord's Vengeance. Bloodlord's Vengeance is a sword that doesn't have a 100% chance to drop. It is one of the 2 swords that the Bloodlord Thalonus, who like protects the entrance to the Logorian at the end of Act 4, can drop. And that Bloodlord's Vengeance is really good because it does give you higher Ascension uptime, and also gives you Pierce and Kills the Fire conversion to Ascension, and also has +2 to Aura of Censure. So not only does it boost Aura of Censure, but it also does make it worth for you to use Ascension. Now Ascension is primarily a absorption skill, but it also can be used to boost your damage, and especially the second part of it, the Clarity of Purpose, does give you some pretty sick offensive ability and also CC resistances, and having a higher duration, a higher uptime on this is very good. So if you are lucky enough to get the sword while leveling, you should instantly use it and also put a 1 pointer into Ascension and a 1 pointer into Clarity of Purpose. If however you don't get it, I would probably skip Ascension until higher difficulties. Now after defeating Logorian in Act 4 you have cleared the base game, and you only have the 3 expansion acts to go. You can decide to either go into Gloomworld and start Act 5, or continue on with your adventures in Forgotten Gods in Act 7. The order of this doesn't really matter, choose to do first whichever act you want to. Depending on which items you find, after getting Heart of Wrath to your max, you still might want to use a filler attack such as Eye of Reckoning or Flames of Ignifar, depending on like which skill your gear supports a little bit better. But what you always want to do is you want to put 1 point into Crushing Verdict, and then proceed to put points down here to get to the Aura Celestial Presence from the Guardians of Empyrean. You want to 1 point the Guardians and then max out the Celestial Presence to get the maximum amount of fire resistance reduction through Celestial Presence as well. Additionally, you can use the Guardians to proc Devotions. You can see that at this level 43 example I was still using Eye of Reckoning, because I found a pretty good Rift Claw Slicer from the dinosaurs here in Act 7. Also, so far the build has only been relying on the heal 3 Word of Renewal and your pots. So for additional sustain, you could use a couple of devotions. First of all, if you do use a skill like Our Reckoning that has lots of weapon damage, you could go for Ghoul and like lifesteal via your weapon damage and Ghoul. However, I would actually not say that that's like the ideal thing to do here, but instead either use Bat, especially when you have Pierce or Vitality to Fire conversion, such as for example through the Rift Claw Slicer, or grab the Behemoth Devotion for HP, health regeneration, and also a pretty nice heal and more HP regeneration whenever this procs. The problem with Giant's Blood and Behemoth, however, is that it does require 4 blue, so we'd have to get another blue devotion first, such as Lizard or Eel. When it comes to other gear that you should look out for your relic slot, you should get the blueprint for the Endurance relic from one of the faction vendors in Act 7, and then craft this relic, which should be a rather easy craft. This will give you another +1 all skills to Oathkeeper, and additional physical resistance, as well as % fire damage and some HP, as well as a Flame Burst proc that procs whenever you get hit. For your belt, you should either use the Gargoyle Girdle if you find this one, which has like another like +1 Oathkeeper and some more Pierce to Fire conversion globally, so this will also convert the Pierce damage on Bat to fire damage and thus heal you more. Or you could look out for the Agnenborg Waistguard from Act 5 in the Agnenborg, which has +1 all skills to Inquisitor. Other items that are good but aren't guaranteed drops are, for example, the Empowered Electron Invoker, One-Handed Scepter, which has +2 to Heart of Wrath and Aura of Censure, so perfect for this build. The Glory of the Silver Knight with +2 to Aura of Censure and +2 to Summon Guardians of Empyrean, again perfect. Which even has the Abolish Evil melee attack, which you could use in between as a filler to also proc devotions. The legendary Light's Oath Ring, which I was lucky enough to get here. This is a little bit harder to get than the other ones, again a random drop, but it also does have Judgment, bonuses, and the Fire Lance proc, as well as more Pierce to Fire global conversion. And also the level 58 Spell Sage boots, which give you another +2 to Aura of Censure. With a setup like this, you should cruise through the expansions. Alright, we have Ekket'LUL here, who has like one scary ability, which he didn't even use, and start working on fixing resistances for Elite, prepare your character for Elite, because in Elite difficulty you will lose another 25% resistances to the upper row of your resistances. So try to have all of these overcapped by 25%-ish at the end of normal difficulty. If you struggle fixing your resistances, you can always check out the faction vendors and also check out which kind of augments they can sell at honored and revered status, and if necessary you farm them up to honored status to like get some honored level augments. I would not necessarily recommend you to grind them out all the way to revered. That is very slowish and very grindy on normal difficulty. I would rather recommend you guys to do that on elite difficulty, and elite difficulty shouldn't be like that hard to do when you're like playing a build like this. Also, one last thing to note before you go to other difficulties is that you, out of all these skeleton key dungeons that you can do in this game, you should actually go into the Ancient Grove dungeon on normal difficulty, because the Ancient Grove dungeon can reward you with blueprints. There is a vendor down there called Vinelton, and Vinelton can sell you the blueprints for the Prismatic Diamond, which is a really good component for your head armor. Alright, so for higher difficulties you just basically run through the game again and again on Elite and Ultimate. Elite shouldn't really be a problem for you at all. You also don't have to do the expansion acts if you don't want to on Elite. They are entirely optional here in my opinion. What you should do in Elite is you should try to get your reputation up to, at the very least, honored with all the factions, if you haven't done that in normal already. And maybe even get some of them to revered to gain access to the armor augments, which will make it even easier for you to cap out your resistances for ultimate, because in ultimate you're gonna lose another 25% to your upper and your lower row of your resistances, apart from stun resistance. And also don't forget to buy the writ from the faction vendors once you hit honored status. That's gonna increase your reputation gain quite a bit and make it easier for you to hit the revered status. Let me actually start off with the skill allocation here. Now at the end of normal, your Oathkeeper tree should look something like this. I didn't tell you to put as many points here, but yeah, this is like what you do after maxing out Celestial Presence. Basically you should start working on Presence of Virtue and try to soft cap this. Also put Haven up to 3 points, this is really good. And put a 1 point into Resilience back in case you didn't use this so far, or you did spec out of it because you spec'd out of your Hood from the Death's Vigil boss. For the Inquisitor's tree, just have like some pointers into the Word of Renewal line, right? Max at Aura of Censure if possible with gear, and put at least 4 points into deadly aim, and have like Lightning Tether and Stonebox still 1 pointed, to have an ability that can proc devotions very well. And you still have 81 points to go until you have maxed out your mastery points, and you will get those remaining points through the remaining level ups up to level 100, and then there are some locked behind some quests on actually normal elite and ultimate, such as for example the Hidden Path quest. If you don't know about this quest line, just like Google Hidden Path Grim Dawn, and that should like guide you on how to get there and how to complete the hidden path. And then there will be some points locked behind Act 6 and 7 in Ultimate, and also behind the Shattered Realm on Ultimate difficulty. Now, what do you invest in with these points? You should start working on your defenses now, right? You can't get any tank here anymore from your mastery bars, like you have already maxed them out both on normal difficulty. So what you need more is more tankiness. Well, how do you get more tankiness? Well, there's still two skills that have absorption in Paladin, number 1 being Ascension, and number 2 being the Inquisitor's Seal. Which one of these two you max out first is kinda up to you. Inquisitor's Seal does have a 100% uptime, however, it only gives you defenses in the form of absorption, health regeneration, and elemental resistances as long as you stand on top of it. So it does reduce your mobility a little bit, while Ascension basic is a buff to yourself and gives you like more damage and more absorption, but it does not have a 100% uptime, so you need to be careful whenever this is down. However, with this, you don't have to stand on any kind of seal, so I would personally probably max out Ascension first, like you just max this out, and put at least a 1 point into Clarity of Purpose, and then after that, work on the seal. You could maybe even delay the seal until Ultimate difficulty, depending on like how tanky you feel, but eventually you will have to max this out as well and get a 1 point into Arcane Empowerment. Other ways to increase your resistances would be Vigor, right? You can get this up to 8 points for 26%, Aether and Chaos Rust, and then put even more points. And then the next 2 points will give you 2% each, also still very good. And then after the soft cap, after 10 out of 10 points here, you will only get 1% resistances per point, so that might not be that useful for you. You can definitely put more points into Vigor for more HP and more CC resistances. You can even hard cap this to, for example, 12 out of 10 points, because the HP scaling on this is pretty good. But with Renewal, well, putting more points here would increase your healing and also give you more defensive ability, and defensive ability is gonna be pretty important later on as well, so you do want to max this out eventually as well. Let's go back to the Oathkeeper tree. Here you can also max out Judgment, at least soft cap it for like higher radius on the initial suction, and also more damage. Also, you do convert physical to fire damage thanks to the shield, so the internal trauma damage here is basically burn damage. Also, you can increase the amount of points in Crushing Verdict. This physical and internal trauma scaling, because it's in the skill tree itself, actually comes before the conversion. So the physical and internal trauma damage from Judgment will first be enhanced by the % physical and internal trauma damage modifiers from Crushing Verdict, and then after that, converted to fire and burn. On top of that, Crushing Verdict does slow the enemy and also reduce their defensive ability for up to 5 seconds, which is insane. In my opinion, you should at least soft cap both of these. Other things that you should also work on is to hard cap your Presence of Virtue to like the max to get even more offensive ability permanently, or also to like put 10 points into Haven for even more HP. And also you should put Resilience up to 5 points, because at 5 points it does give you another +1% all res and 8% phys res, 8% DA. It's actually very, very good at 5 points out of 12, and usually this is also enough. You don't need to put more than 5 points here. One thing I did forget in the playthrough, and also I'm forgetting here in this video, I talk about this way too late, Safeguard. This obviously does scale with a shield, so you could like also put a 1 pointer here once you start using a shield. So like basically back in normal difficulty when you like killed Krieg the first time and then got the shield from Forgotten Gods. Once you have the shield and once you're expecting the Oathkeeper, you could like put a 1 pointer here for like some additional armor. Now for devotions, after getting your sustain from Bat and Giant, you should be working towards the Torch, but you could also switch around your devotions a little bit to also include Chariot on top. This is what I did, and I'll show you here, which was to get the Viper and the Panther, remove the Jackal, add a red note here, grab the Phoenix devotion for additional absorption on the proc. Note that you should not put this proc ever to Guardians of Imperial. You need to proc this yourself, so like Wild Smite, Our Reckoning, Word of Pain, something like that needs to proc this devotion. Then remove Scholar's Light again and aim for the Torch devotion and bind your Torch to an ability that activates this rather easily, such as for example Vanish. This is pretty much the devotion page that I use all the way to level 100, but you can even tweak this one a little bit to get Chariot on top. Now how do you get this Chariot here on top on this devotion page? Well, you don't need these points in Rowan's Crown that badly, right? You don't need the affinity of this rather, and you could also like remove 2 points from Behemoth and then also remove 2 points from Torch, and also remove the 1 point from Dryad to get Chariot. Obviously, in-game you would have to remove the entire Torch first, because you would need the affinity from Chariot to be able to continue using Torch. So this might cost you some additional Aether Crystals, but in the end you're gonna end up with this devotion page, which is gonna be even better for endgame. Now if you check out the grimtools links that I have down below for level 100, you will see a couple of items that you should aim for endgame. So you can see that we're still using a Flesh Warp Defender shield. You can see that I'm using a Seal of the Blazing Inferno, which is like a random blue ring that you can find, which also like gives me +2 to Heart of Wrath. You can see that I'm using a Living Ring, which you can farm very easily in Act 5, and also Winter Shop from the Vinelton guy in the Ancient Grove. Then I'm also using the random drop Runic Bracers. Runic Bracers is just like a pretty nice overall defensive choice for your gloves. Then I'm currently using the Infernal Knight Girdle. If you don't find us, you can also use one of the Gargoyle Waist Guards that you can find in the end of Act 7. And I'm also using the random drop Burn Scale Foot Guards for +2 Aura of Avenger and stun as well as petrify resistances. Then I'm using 2 additional random drops here, the Rune Armor of Ignafar, which does give me another aura actually, the Ignafar's Presence, and this is basically a best in slot chest here for this build because it does give us another aura, which again has fire and burn damage. And I'm also using the mythical Tainted Ruby of Gardal, which is also a random drop and does give me the Flame of Gardal aura, as well as +1 all skills to Inquisitor and more fire damage and less recharge to Judgment. Now you might wonder, how do you get all these random items? Well, some of them are actually kind of common, like there are different rarities for legendary items even for the random ones, and most of these are rather common. And the fastest way to get random legendaries would be to either farm the totems in the main campaign, like try to look for spawn locations that are like close to your rift gates, and then like jump from rift gate to rift gate and farm some totems. Or you can also do the roguelike dungeons in Ultimate. They are pretty good for getting random legendaries as well. The guaranteed items that I'm using here are also pretty good though, such as for example the Mark of the Shadow Queen, which is a faction item that gives you +2 to Aura of Avenger, more elemental damage to Aura of Avenger, and a very nice chunk of offensive ability. You can craft this one after buying the blueprint from the Cult of Bismiel at the revered status, so try to make it to revered status with Cult of Bismiel rather quickly. The next guaranteed drop is the Blaze Heart. You get 1 Blaze Heart guaranteed per character by completing the Dyna questline in Morndale in Ultimate. Basically you get the Reverse's Letter and the Reverse's Offering, and then you will just get a Blaze Heart for free from her. Now why is Blaze Heart so good? Well, it does give you like +1 all skills to Oathkeeper, and it also has the juicy Vitality to Fire conversion, which does help out with your healing from bat. The remaining 3 items we can just target farm just like the shield. For example, Solar Sect Legars that I'm using here, you can farm the 3 bosses from the Hidden Path questline, Drieg, Solar and Bismiel for some pretty nice pounds. Actually all 3 of them are pretty good in my opinion. You could like farm either all 3 of them or just farm one of the 3 whose implicit you like the most. Next up we have the Horns of Ekket'LUL. This one you can get from farming Ekket'LUL, right? Like Ekket'LUL, the boss in the Chthonian Rift Gate between Barrowholm and Morndale, basically between Act 5 and 6, can drop this blue helmet. And this blue helmet does have +1 all skills to Architect Soldier, which unfortunately does not benefit a Paladin. However, it still has another aura on top, which has some additional fire damage. So if you're playing a fire Auradin like this, it's pretty good as well. The last, well, technically target farmable item is the Vanquisher's Mantle that I'm using here. You don't have to use this. This is not best in slot by any means. You can just use whatever shoulder piece you find that just like fixes your resistances. This one is not a must-have at all. However, if you are interested in getting that one, this is the one that drops from the Heart of the Forest, so this will be the one that drops from the final chest in the Ancient Grove dungeon. Before actually getting to Ekket'LUL's Horns, you can always get the level 75 and level 94 Fetid Masks. Level 75 drops in Elite, level 94 drops in Ultimate, near the Maw of Enath next to the Corvin Sands Rift. Now for endgame relics, basically every tier 3, so like legendary relic for Inquisitor or Oathkeeper are gonna be okay to use. For example, Bane is okay-ish. Even better than Bane would be the Ignafar's Combustion though, because Ignafar's Combustion has additional elemental resistance reduction on its proc. And honestly, looking at the Oathkeeper relics compared to Ignafar's Combustion, they are all, at least for this build, worse, so you don't really have to use any of these. If you don't find any of those tier 3 relics. Endurance can actually carry you a long way. You can use Endurance all the way to level 100, and this is still gonna be fine for you. But if you find Ignifer's Combustion, or even you get the Serenity, which I got, then you should probably craft one of these two. Serenity is like the overall safer option, with like the Serenity proc, like another circuit breaker for your character. So this is like very good for hardcore. However, Ignifer's Combustion would be the better relic damage wise. One last item I want to mention is the Gaze of Empyrean. The Gaze of Empyrean is a upgrade over even the Ekket'LUL horns. However, you need to find a random drop blueprint for this one, and that's obviously not as easy, so I wasn't able to do that while I was playing this character. However, if you want to continue playing this character, you can definitely use the Gaze of Empyrean once you get it. And also note that this is not a perfectly min-maxed character, but I mean the build as it is very much good enough to clear all dungeons, clear all kinds of totems, like farm up some good totems, can clear Shadow Realm up to like a decent amount of levels, but probably not much higher than 50 to be honest. At least not on hardcore and softcore. Shadow Realm is way easier, so you should easily get to level 60 to get yourself the Shadow Realm set. And of course the build can also kill Lokar, so it is indeed a very much viable beginner build, because you can basically get all the items that you want for your next and the one after that and the one after that character. And in my opinion, a perfect starter character should be able to do exactly that. Like, it should be able to clear all the dungeons, clear all of main campaign, clear all the totems that you want to clear, do a decent amount of Shadow Realm maybe, and also definitely be able to kill Lokar, so that you can start farming the Lokar set in order to speed up leveling for your consecutive characters. Also, by the way, if you have been wondering about attributes, on this character at least, you don't have to put any into Cunning or Spirit unless you need some more Cunning and Spirit to equip like rings or amulets or like a dagger or a sword. Just put everything else into Physique and you should be good. And yeah, that's gonna be it for this guide video. I hope you guys enjoyed the guide, and also you're gonna enjoy the build itself. I also want to thank all my supporters on Twitch as well as on Patreon a lot, because without you guys I wouldn't be able to invest this time to make these kind of guides. So if you're new to this channel, feel free to check out my other Grim Dawn content, and I would very much appreciate you supporting this channel by either subscribing or checking out me on livestream on Twitch, or maybe even supporting me via Patreon. That would be very much appreciated. Or you can also just join my Discord channel and hang out with the community. The link for that is down below in the description of this video. Any kind of support is very much appreciated and helps to grow this channel and also to grow the community. But yeah, either way, have fun playing this awesome game and this awesome build, and I'll see you around on my next video.